Qua khu phóng ơi.
September 29th, 2025. Vietnam faced a night of terror as Typhoon Bualoi slammed into the country with hurricane-force winds and massive waves. In Sha Tin province, the storm roared ashore just after midnight, whipping through towns at nearly 70 miles per hour and sending 35-foot waves crashing over sea walls. More than 28,000 people were forced to evacuate, fleeing schools, businesses and homes as the power grid failed and darkness swallowed entire neighborhoods. But the chaos didn't end on the coast. Hours later, as the typhoon's powerful circulation pushed inland, the skies over Ninh Bình province twisted into a new nightmare. A violent tornado touched down in the early morning hours, tearing homes apart, flipping vehicles and killing 6 people in an instant. Survivors described it as the loudest roar we've ever heard while rescue teams raced through flooded streets and collapsed buildings to pull people from the wreckage. What began as one of the strongest typhoons of the year quickly spiraled into a multi-disaster event, a storm surge, torrential flooding, and even a deadly tornado outbreak leaving an entire nation in shock.
Nhờ thời đủ Nam Định anh chị em nhé, gió biển là sức gió biển bây giờ là nó đang
Để nó phải cái đường xuống đóng mình kìa. Lúc
tình hình lụt lụt. Qua phát biểu trước sau.
chạy hết rồi. May là chưa sụp nhà thờ anh chị em ạ. Phải chạy thật nhanh.
As the clock struck midnight on September 29th, Typhoon Bualoi roared ashore in Ha Tin province, located in north-central Vietnam. Packing sustained winds of nearly 70 miles per hour with gusts reaching even higher, the storm slammed coastal towns with a ferocity that residents compared to a freight train that never stopped. Waves as high as 35 feet battered the shoreline, breaching seawalls and flooding low-lying communities within minutes. Streets that had been bustling just hours earlier were reduced to rivers of rushing water, sweeping away cars' debris and anything in their path. Authorities had ordered mass evacuations before landfall, moving more than 28,000 residents out of danger zones. In Sha Tin City and surrounding districts, schools, hotels, and public buildings were transformed into emergency shelters as families huddled together listening to roofs tear away and glass shatter against the pounding winds. The storm struck during high tide, magnifying the impact of storm surge and raising fears of seawall collapse. For many, along Vietnam's north-central coast that night marked the beginning of one of the most destructive weather events in years.
sắp đổ rồi. Nước gì thế này? Tì tì. Em rượu bị vui luôn. Nước. Ăn rượu tiền luôn nhá.
Bão số 10 thì đã đi qua, nhưng mà hậu quả để lại cho bãi biển Thiên Cầm thì
By dawn, the full scale of Bualoi's destruction began to emerge. In Ha Tin and neighboring provinces, entire neighborhoods were left unrecognizable. Homes had their roofs ripped away, trees were snapped like matchsticks, and power lines dangled across flooded roads, sparking dangerously in the water. Local authorities confirmed that over 16,500 people in Ha Tin alone had been evacuated, while thousands more across Thanh Hoa and Quang Tri provinces were forced to flee in the middle of the night. In coastal villages, residents described how walls of water surged inland, toppling fishing boats and swallowing farmland. One man compared the noise of the storm to 1,000 jet engines overhead, while another said he watched helplessly as his house buckled under the wind within minutes. The Vietnamese government reported at least 4 people missing with dozens more injured as of Monday morning. Airports in Gia Nang Phu by Jong Hoi and Tho Xuan were shut down, canceling 42 flights and delaying more than 50 others, leaving travelers stranded. The storm's relentless rain, measuring between 8 to 16 inches, with some areas facing totals over 24 inches, triggered widespread flash flooding. Rivers overflowed, submerging entire communities and cutting off rural villages from outside help. For the millions of people living in Bualoi's path, the typhoon was not just a weather event, but a night of chaos and survival. Just as rescue crews were scrambling to respond to flooding, a violent tornado struck the northern province of Ninh Bình in the early hours of September 29th, adding another layer of disaster to an already dire situation. Spawned by the powerful circulation of Typhoon Bualoi, the twister ripped through multiple coastal communes between 3:00 and 5:00 a.m., leaving a trail of devastation that locals described as the worst storm in living memory. The tornado collapsed dozens of homes, tore roofs from schools, snapped more than 180 power poles, and flattened crops across several miles of farmland. Entire neighborhoods were plunged into darkness as nearly 8,600 households lost electricity. Authorities confirmed at least 6 deaths and 7 injuries, with survivors pulled from the wreckage of shattered homes. Social media videos captured terrifying scenes, swirling debris spiraling into the sky, rooftops crumbling like paper, and residents fleeing as the winds roared through their streets. In Thinh Long commune, one of the hardest-hit areas, families watched helplessly as walls collapsed and power lines sparked in the pouring rain. Emergency crews worked through the morning to clear debris, restore power, and evacuate families from unsafe homes. For many, the tornado struck without warning, turning a night already marked by the fury of Typhoon Bualoi into an even deadlier disaster.
Thấy không? Mấy chu nhà Từ nó ném hết xuống dưới này. Ở tường kìa.
Cái bản đồ nó rất đấy.
Vào đảo Ba tỉnh rồi.
In the wake of Typhoon Bualoi's landfall and the destructive tornadoes that followed, entire communities were left grappling with severe infrastructure collapse. Power grids suffered massive disruptions, with more than 180 electric poles snapped and over 230 meters of transmission lines destroyed in Ninh Bình province alone. This triggered widespread blackouts that left nearly 8,600 households without electricity, forcing families to endure the storm in total darkness. In addition, dozens of schools, including one in Kim Jong commune, had their roofs torn away, leaving classrooms filled with debris and rainwater. Roadways became impassable as uprooted trees, landslides, and collapsed utility poles blocked critical routes. Emergency crews worked around the clock with excavators and chainsaws to clear debris, but travel remained dangerous for days. Bridges and dikes sustained significant structural damage, with some seawalls at risk of collapse from relentless waves. In coastal villages, residents watched as floodwaters surged over weakened embankments, threatening to swallow farmland and entire neighborhoods. Agriculture, one of Vietnam's most vital economic sectors, also took a devastating hit. In Thanh Hoa and Ha Tin, thousands of acres of rice paddies and citrus groves were submerged under muddy floodwaters. In Ninh Bình, tornadoes swept across farmland, flattening crops and scattering livestock. Farmers reported the loss of poultry, cattle, and pigs, while flooded fisheries left countless families without their primary source of income. The combined toll on infrastructure and agriculture was staggering, amplifying fears of food shortages, economic instability, and long-term recovery challenges. While the human toll was tragic, with lives lost and injuries mounting, the destruction of the very systems that sustain daily life hinted at a prolonged struggle ahead for affected provinces.
Nhưng mà còn các cái quán xã dọc ven biển thì đều bị thiệt. Người dân thì đang tích cực khắc phục hậu quả do bão để lại.
Nhà bố em thiệt hại rất là nặng. Nhà bố em
1.8 gà hồ chuẩn bị được bán.
Amid the destruction, the most powerful images came not from collapsed buildings or broken power lines, but from the faces of survivors. In Ninh Binh's Thinh Long commune, families described the tornado's arrival as a roar, like a freight train, giving them only seconds to find shelter. One mother clutched her two children as the roof of their home ripped away, recalling how they huddled under a wooden table until neighbors pulled them to safety. In Ha Tin, where Typhoon Bualoi made its fiercest landfall, fishermen told of rushing back from sea at the last moment, abandoning their boats to save their families as walls of water swallowed the shoreline. Social media became a lifeline, with residents posting desperate calls for help and videos showing submerged streets, cars swept away, and neighbors forming human chains to rescue the stranded. In La Paz-style scenes, shopkeepers worked together to board up windows and move goods to higher ground, while volunteers in rural villages shared food, dry clothes, and candles with families who had lost everything. Despite exhaustion and fear, a spirit of unity emerged. Students, teachers, and local farmers all joined rescue crews, clearing rubble and carrying the injured on makeshift stretchers. Emergency shelters quickly filled, yet volunteers made sure children had warm blankets and rice porridge. For many, the storm was not just a test of endurance, but a reminder of the strength of community bonds. In the darkest hours, stories of survival carried a powerful message. Even when nature's fury tears apart homes and livelihoods, the resilience and compassion of ordinary people remain unshaken.
Chạy hết rồi. May là chưa sụp nhà thờ anh chị em ạ. Phải chạy thật nhanh. Nhà thờ đổ Lam Định anh chị em nhá. Gió biển là sức gió biển bây giờ là nó đang.
Thế thì đầu cây cối.
Đấy nó xoáy ra đến xuống đóng mình kìa. Lúc xoáy.
Tình hình lụt lụt.
Quá phát biểu trước sau.
Trời ơi! Trời ơi! Ui, trời ơi!
As Vietnam continues to battle the aftermath of Typhoon Bualoi and the devastating tornado in Ninh Bình, the images of flooded homes, collapsed buildings, and displaced families are a stark reminder of how vulnerable communities remain in the face of nature's fury. The courage of rescue workers, the resilience of survivors, and the urgency of recovery efforts highlight both the human cost and the human spirit in times of crisis. If you found this report informative, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to stay updated on breaking weather events and global news. Your support helps us bring timely and accurate coverage to viewers worldwide. And now we'd like to hear from you. How do you think communities both in the U.S. and abroad can better prepare for extreme weather events in the future? Share your thoughts in the comments below.